Without any further ado, let's welcome back.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
There is a bibliography. All the teachers have a list of books, so if you need a bibliography, please make sure you get one. And we have pens. You may want to take notes. So, because I have my notes, you don't have my notes. I am such a teacher, I wouldn't make you take your own notes. If you need a pen, please come get one. And again, there's a bibliography. Did you get one? Some get, oh, good. Okay, so, we have a map. I like some sort of audio, visual aid. I'm going to be the audio, but there's something to look at besides me, which is a good thing. The subtitle of this talk is Around the World in 80 Books, more or less. There are about, I think the last time I counted, maybe about 65 titles here. You guys are going to come up together 15. So at the end of the talk, we're going to open it up, and I hope you have some to also suggest to us, and that would be great. So, to introduce my topic, I was pleased when Lisa Williams, now in Iowa, asked me to speak about literature from around the world. I've been reading and sharing international children's lit for years with my students and gathering wonderful titles of adult fiction too. There are some obvious advantages that international literature or world literature can offer the American reader. It can be a window into another, sometimes exotic culture. How often do we get invited into someone's home? Our typical international tours often take the castles and cathedrals bent. We see the historical highlights of a place, but don't really learn much about the people. These often share the inner truth of families and relationships and people's thoughts. English teachers are voyeurs. We like to know what's going on inside. Also, with a good translation, and I found some wonderful translations of these books, we can hear the cadence of another culture's speech. Even the books originally written in English are not necessarily in American English. I find reading, hearing other English entertaining. How many of us pick up the inflections and speech patterns when we travel? My Canadian visitors. This literature can also remind us that although there is much that makes our world cultures unique, there is also much that we humans have in common. Ties that link us together, such as the need for food, shelter, clothing, security, and love. And there are no expensive passports or painful vaccinations, no long layovers in predictable airports or lost luggage. The beverage cart is as close as your kitchen, and I bet the in-flight snacks are much healthier for you. So sit back, unfasten your seatbelt, and let's travel around the world. Be assured I will not be talking about all the books listed in the bibliography, and I will be asking for your recommended titles too. There are a lot of titles, and I'm not going to do that much talking. So this is your list, this is my list. We're going to try to keep them together. We're going to start in North America, go to South America, then I think we're zipping over to Asia, coming back through Africa, so we're going to sort of play with that one. It's a geographical tour. We're going to start in Canada, and Louise Penny is the first author I want to tell you about. There's a lot of mysteries on this list because I love reading mysteries, and I like reading mysteries about different cultures. Louise Penny has terrific mysteries. The majority that I've read is a series of 6, I believe, now in the series. They're based in Quebec province, and they're sort of similar to the cottage cozies like Agatha Christie and M.C. Beaton. I'm going to talk about her in a second. In the first book, we meet Chief Inspector Armand Gramache, who is in charge of all murders in Quebec. He comes into a little town, it's called Three Pines. Three Pines looks like a really sweet, lovely village with wonderful, quirky characters, but murder and mayhem abound in this place. The murders there, every book has a murder there. It seems to be a very sleepy little village just north of the Vermont border. If you like Agatha Christie, or if you're in love with the Hamish Macbeth that I'm going to talk about in a second, like me, you're going to love this. This is a more intellectual and often laugh out loud, entertaining humor. There's all these literary allusions that are quite fun to come across. I love the dialogue, and you have to read very carefully to get all of the quick, very sharp humor. I just finished the 5th one in the series. It was called Bury Your Dead. It's wonderful. What Penny does in that book is I think it's number 5. She goes back to number 4, reopens the case, talks about the same mystery again, and it is superb. Kind of fun. Let's see now. Canada. Oh, I said White Rapids. Okay. That White Rapids, the next one on the list, that was suggested by David Small, a graphic artist, Caldecott winner, National Book Award honoree. This is a graphic novel by a French Canadian, and he suggested that one. And you know, if David suggests something, you put it on your list. Okay. Now, this list. Now we're going to South America and Central America, Chile. The Dreamer. This is actually a children's book, and it's been up for a number of awards. This is written by Pam Monroe Ryan and illustrated by Peter Sess. Peter Sess is Czechoslovakian. So he grew up behind the Iron Curtain, and he's emigrated to the United States. So he's got this very passionate view of liberty, freedom, and he loves the United States. He's got a terrific book out on Christopher Columbus that has a very different view. It was published in '92. Very different view of Columbus than what we had in '92. It's called Follow the Dream. In case you're looking for a picture book with an interesting, positive image of Christopher Columbus. You don't see those too much anymore. The Dreamer, though, this is the biography of Pablo Neruda, the poet, and it's about Neruda's early life as an outsider within his family. He has a very terrifying figure of the father. This is children's lit, but it is very worthy of an adult audience.
What age children?
Oh, I'm sorry. This would probably go 4th grade up. Yeah, it's a biography. Ryan's poetic prose style totally dovetails with the subject, right? She's writing about a poet, so it's a very poetic style, and I'll read a little bit to you. Interspersed with the text are poems that mimic Neruda's style and push readers to think imaginatively and visually. Sess's whimsical pen and ink pointillist illustrations enliven the presentation. Each chapter is preceded by 3 small drawings that hint at something to come. This is the perfect marriage of text and art, and offers an excellent introduction to one of the world's most famous poets. An appended author's note gives further insight into Neruda's beliefs and accomplishments, and there are excerpts of his poems. I can pass it on this book. It really is a beautifully created book too. Pages are lovely. Oh, let's see. I'll start at the beginning. This is when he was a very young child. Rain. And then here we have 3 small pictures. On a continent of many songs, in a country shaped like the arm of a tall, yes, guitarista, the rain drummed down on the town of Temuco. Neftali Race, because he changed his name, sat in his bed, propped up by pillows, and stared at the schoolwork in front of him. His teacher called it simple addition, but it was never simple for him. How he wished the numbers would disappear. He squeezed his eyes closed and then opened them. So you get an idea. This is a biography. So I'll pass it around. It is delightful. And at the end, there are also his poems. The next book I want to tell you about, Bel Canto. Many of you have read this. This takes place in an unnamed South American country. There's a soprano who sings in honor of the Japanese visitors. Terrorists invade the compound at this embassy, and the plot involves the interaction of the terrorists and their captives. It is beautifully written. If you've never read this, this will sweep you away, and it takes place in South America. Probably the most important book written in the 20th century, 100 Years of Solitude. If you have never read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's book, give yourself a gift. Give yourself time to sit and read this gift. But if I had to pick one book for South America, this would be the classic I would suggest. It has magical realism, it is haunting, it has lyrical prose. It is my husband's favorite book. I made him read it. He was shocked that this was such a good book. He said it took him an awful long time. He had to read the sentences over and over again because there's so much packed into one sentence that it was hard to get all of the information. The opening line tells it all. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Oriano Buenda was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. The story follows 100 years in the life of this village, founded by Jose Alciado Buendia, and occupied by descendants, all sporting variations on that man's name. He has 2 sons, 3 grandsons, and then there are the women. There are 2 Ursulas and a handful of Remedios, Fernanda, Pilar. They all struggle to remain grounded even as their menfolk build castles in the air. If it is possible for a novel to be highly comic and deeply tragic at the same time, then 100 Years of Solitude does the trick. Civil war rages throughout, hearts break, dreams shattered, and lives are lost. Yet the effect is a literary pentimento with sorrow's outlines bleeding through the vibrant colors of Garcia Marquez's magical realism. And I think you know what magical realism is, right? Everybody's with me? Good. Consider, for example, the ghost of one of the characters that was murdered by one of the sons in a fight. So lonely is the man's ghost that it haunts the murderer's house, searching anxiously for water with which to clean its wound. The murderer's wife is so moved that the next time she saw the dead man uncovering the pots on the stove, she understood what he was looking for, and from then on she placed water jugs all about the house. It's a ghost story. It's funny. It's a love story. It is, as I said, it's Nobel Prize winner. Probably the best book written in the 20th century. That said, if you haven't read it, you will. Peru, we have another Nobel Prize winner in Peru, Mario Vargas Llosa. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2010. And this also follows the same line of magical realism that you see quite often in Central American and South American literature. They're not only fantastic novels that read beautifully. Llosa is one of the authors who in the 20th century has written the most eloquently and the most poignantly about the intersection between culture and politics in Latin America. Llosa is the first South American to win the Nobel Prize in Literature since Garcia Marquez in '82. The Nobel Prize Academy praised his cartography of the structures of power and his trenchant images of the individual's resistance, revolt, and defeat. And then we're going to go up the coast to Central America, in Mosquito Coast by Paul Peru. There's Central American jungles, and it's narrated by Charlie, a 14-year-old son of an eccentric father who decides to move his family from Massachusetts down to the mosquito-infested jungle. This is sort of like a Robinson Crusoe meets Lord of the Flies. The father slowly goes insane. It is fabulous prose. It is a great story. And I think it was made into a movie, too.